Never been this good. Catch Made for Each Other weekdays at 12:30 p.m. on your drama station. Brought to you by
Hyundai Island Conditions apply.
Wednesday, June 19, 2024. Thanks so much for joining us for CVM News at noon. I'm Curlin Brown, and we begin with an update. The police have identified the female who took her life while at the Negril police station in Westland on Tuesday. She is 57-year-old Justine Templeman, who is from San Francisco in California, the USA, but was living at an England address. Now, Templeman was found hanging from a still in the bathroom at the station after asking to use the restroom. She used a makeshift rope with material torn from her clothing. It was later reported she was suffering from mental issues. A couple was shot to death and their house set on fire in Content District near Hartford in Westland on Tuesday. They've been identified as 36-year-old Kurt Hall, a farmer and security guard, and 57-year-old Merlene Dale Hall, a market vendor. Reports are shortly after 3 a.m. Residents heard gunshots coming from the Hall's residence and saw heavily armed men running from the burning building. They went on to alert the authorities, and when the police and the fire brigade arrived at the scene, the house was engulfed in flames. The charred remains of the couple were later removed and identified. The couple died, leaving a 7-year-old son who managed to escape unharmed. Now, over the past 2 months, the parish of Westmoreland has recorded a number of double murders, including last week's fatal shooting of 2 brothers in the Bath district. Investigators say they have not yet established a motive surrounding this latest tragedy. The country is mourning the loss of a titan in its cultural and entertainment spheres. Kingsley Cooper, founder and chairman of Pulse Investments Limited, has died at age 71. The proud pioneer of Jamaican aesthetic passed peacefully in his sleep on Tuesday night after recently being admitted to hospital in Florida. Cooper's influence extended far beyond the boardroom. He was a visionary leader who made notable contributions through his dedication to fashion, entertainment, and the empowerment of Jamaican talent. Now, as the nation mourns his passing, CVM News joins in extending our deepest condolences to his family and his loved ones. May his soul rest in peace. The Minister of Education and Youth, Favour Williams, has announced a new initiative targeting Jamaica's young men. The ministry, in partnership with the National Parent Support Commission, the NPSC, is spearheading the project under the existing parenting program. The program, Men Who Mentor, aims to help current and future generations.
Only last week that we added a new component to our parenting program. It is called Men Who Mentor. Last week we welcomed 150 men into our Men Who Mentor program. As you know, here in Jamaica, our boys are at greater risk of being left behind for a number of reasons. We know that our boys learn differently. We also know that our boys need male role models to guide them and to help them stay on track. Men Who Mentor will participate in training modules that are designed to enhance their parenting skills and empower them to mentor the next generation of men and eventually fathers.
This follow-up now, the opposition spokesman on health and wellness, Dr. Alfred Dawes, earlier today at a PNP press conference, sought to refute claims by the Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, that there are working ventilators throughout the public health system.
Fact. that many of these ventilators that were donated during COVID as a result of the efforts of the European Union and several private sector organization entities, as well as well-thinking Jamaicans, these ventilators are not in working order. So we know that many of these ventilators are in boxes, they're not commissioned, or they have been cannibalized where one part has been taken from a ventilator to fix another ventilator that is not working. So we are seeing what can be described as fuzzy maths, where we do not know exactly how many are operational. I cannot tell you how many. The Ministry of Health and Wellness cannot tell you. What we need is an audit to see exactly how many ventilators are available island-wide.
Jamaica's economic growth has varied for years, though the government in its latest report announced an increase. Some believe the growth is not evident. Speaking on CVM's lead story on Tuesday, lead researcher Ronaldo Blake and economic commentator Dennis Chung says more work needs to be done to see great change.
When you look at economies all over the world and their experiences of growth, the instances of Guyana are pretty rare, right? Not many countries or a majority of countries are able to find so much oil and natural gas that they're able to essentially supercharge growth in their economies. And even when that happens, there is still a huge question of how that resource is managed to lead to the development of the wider economy, because there are several challenges that can arise from a huge windfall from natural energy.
I agree with Ronaldo that we're not going to see it definitely this fiscal year or going into next year. And the reason for that is because our economy, and you'd have heard me, George, during the COVID growth saying that once we get back to the levels of GDP that we're at, we were going to start seeing 1 to 2%. The fact is that, you know, if a car can only go 50 miles per hour, then no matter how much you rev the gas pedal, it's going to go 50 miles per hour, because the engine of that car is what determines how fast it can go. And that's a challenge with Jamaica. Now, so in 2013, and I keep coming back to this, the IMF agreement said that we signed and we put forward, said that one of the most important things that we have to do in order to see greater levels of growth is the labor market reform.
Members of the Jamaica Constabulary and the Defence Forces are encouraging citizens to participate in the upcoming 5K run walk geared towards raising funds for the country's veterans. Now, speaking on Sunrise today, Chairman of the National Puppy Appeal Committee, Lieutenant Colonel Carl Clark, and Military Officer Major Barrington Gale highlighted the importance of such an event.
We're putting on this 5K, National Puppy Appeal 5K. We normally call it the Puppy Run. And this is in aid of our military veterans, not just who are staying at the Curfew home, and Major Gale will talk more about that, but military veterans in general. And it happens on Sunday, the 23rd of June, 2024. Starting at 05:30 hours for warm-up, that is 5:30 a.m.
Talk now, please.
And 0600 hours for runoff, that is 6 a.m. for the runoff.
Got it.
It's not just a normal race. It's an opportunity for our citizens to come out and experience and learn about some of our military history, our veterans, and the important contribution they have paid to our country, and not just our country, but the Western world as we know it.
As a young man in the military, it's something that I grew up seeing happening. I encourage my other colleagues and my juniors to follow suit because it's inspirational. It is something that a number of Jamaicans look towards and see and look up to our veterans. So I think it is a wonderful initiative.
Lots more to come here on CVM News at noon, right after this. Stay with us, please.
We needed to raise capital, but our experience with local financial institutions was that they were cautious and slow to act, and interest rates were far too high. We had real concerns about financing our business through outside equity investors and the possibility of interference. Could we get a fair valuation for our business? We had our own ideas about the business and its value. Should I go the traditional route of bank financing, or should I try the Jamaica Stock Exchange? So we made a call and experienced transformation of our business through conversations. I'm John Mahfood, CEO of Jamaican Teas, and we're listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Give us a call today at 876-967-3271 to begin your transformation through conversation. We want to see your company listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
After months of preparation, Jamaican athletes will clash at the J3A Puma National Senior and Junior Championships at the National Stadium, June 27 to 30. For tickets to the Summer Olympics in Paris, Olympic champion Hansel Parchment, plus Oblique Seville headline the men's division, which also includes Rashid Broadbell, Rashawn Clark, Jaden Hibbert, Akeem Blake, Johan Blake, and Julian Fort. Olympic and world champions Sharika Jackson, Elaine Thompson-Hera, and Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, along with Rochelle Clay, Shanika Ricketts, and Danielle Williams, will make the action pulsating on the women's side. That's the J3A Puma National Senior and Junior Championship, June 27 to 30 at the National Stadium. It will be sensational.
Welcome back now, and it's time for our discussion segment. And today we're talking about education and the well-being of principals. Now, a recent study by Dr. Kenny Thompson, a professor of educational policy planning and leadership, as well as Dr. Anne-Marie Wilmot, a lecturer in educational leadership and management, found a high degree of unwellness among school principals, and they both join us now to discuss the findings. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Great, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what could have prompted the need for such a research? Starting with the lady.
Right. Thank you so much for that question, Carleen. I mean, we have quite a bit of research that help us to understand, who principals are, what their leadership practices are, how they should behave and so on. But we do not have a lot, especially in Jamaica and the Caribbean, which really digs deep into principals' own interactions and understanding and interpretation of their work, how they feel about it, and how they are navigating their experiences. And so it was an easy project to undertake, because I had already done some work just looking at leadership at the college level, just looking at what exists, what well-being strategies exist, and how these middle leaders what suggestions they had that they could use, that their principals could use to better serve their well-being. So the coming together to look at school principals was an easy segue, and because we had already established that foundation.
Dr. Thompson, I know you must have been taking notes, to have taken on a project like this.
Yes, indeed. As you might be aware, much of my work has focused on challenging leaders to address the needs of their institutions, their organizations, their communities, and their countries. And so as I reflected on my journey as an analyst and as a researcher, I began to step back and ask, who is this person on whom we are placing so much burden and demanding so much of their work? How are they as individuals coping with the realities with which they have to contend? Mm-hmm. What is their state of health? To what extent are there shortcomings and the gaps in their work? To what extent are these reflections of the contextual challenges and realities they face? And so this was an attempt then to look at the other side of the coin, not just the output of the leader, but the inputs, the challenges, the issues, the realities, and to examine the person's perception and consciousness of his or her mental, physical, cognitive, and spiritual, emotional state.
So with 56% now of principals saying they didn't agree to feeling supported by the Ministry of Education, how, if at all, do you think this affects the teaching and learning process in Jamaica? Well, once again, Ms. Wilmot, sorry. Start with you.
I'm not hearing.
Did you get the question,
Sorry.
Dr. T? With 56% of the
Okay, that's me. Okay.
Right.
Oh, so sorry. Yes, thanks. I thought you were asking opponent. Yes.
Yeah, but she seems
what
not
it
to be
really
hearing
suggests, are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Yes. With such a high percentage of principals saying they do not feel supported by the ministry, a number of things arise from that. It means that in many of their decisions, they feel that they are on their own. They are going to doubt that if something goes wrong when they make a decision, that they will receive support and understanding from the ministry. The other thing is that they are likely, because they doubt they have support, they're likely to go out on a limb, which is sometimes a good thing, and to do things knowing that it may cross the ministry's line. Even if the thing is legitimate, legal, moral, and upright, the ministry may have questions about it. So what it does is that it creates a feeling of uncertainty sometimes. It leaves them in a vacuum, and it eats on their sense of comfort and their sense of assurance that they're doing the right thing. So even though they may be doing the right thing, because of their sense that the ministry does not support them, it will result in them feeling a sense of doubt.
Dr. Wilmot, let's look at some of the recommendations that came out of that. What were some of the recommendations, therefore?
Well, certainly we have another phase of the project that we want to undertake, but Ministry of Education certainly will need to look at the amount of autonomy that principals are afforded. We also need to seek to help principals feel more supported. For example, they do not have a challenge feeling supported by their board. But we do know that the principal leadership does not hinge on just one aspect of governance. And so we'd want to make sure that we just understand a little bit more clearly how is it that we can, what is it that we can do to allow principals to feel more supported, feel a stronger sense of autonomy so that they can feel better personally, emotionally, psychologically. They are more suited then to make stronger decisions within the schools that they lead. And hopefully, these decisions will have an impact in just the whole overall effectiveness of their leadership.
Thank you. Dr. Thompson, are there any success stories or best practices from other countries that Jamaica could consider adopting at this time?
One of in places like the United States of America, their studies are showing that there's a high degree of unwellness as well among their principals. And one of the painful realities is that whereas members of staff are protected by unions in those countries, when you are a principal, you do not have the union to support you. But in a similar situation in the UK, but in countries such as Finland and Singapore and Denmark, there is a high level of support